My sister-in-law was a special ED teacher who got 3 students in her care K LLED for insurance money and targeted my daughter next. But when I tried to expose her, she had me locked in a psych ward and turned my husband against me. So I escaped and took her down in the most nuclear way possible. They say grief brings people closer, but in Vanessa's case, it always seemed to make her shine. My name is Natalie. I'm 38, a school counselor in Fairview, Oregon, and I've worked at Northridge Elementary for almost a decade. I've seen plenty of heartache in this job, kids with unstable homes, illnesses, tragedies, but nothing ever made me feel like this before. Nothing ever made me feel suspicious. Started with a death. That was about 3 years ago. Jeremy Hall. He was in Vanessa's special ed class. Asthma attack on the playground. Vanessa had been the only teacher on duty that day, but no one questioned it. It was a freak accident, they said. A tragedy. Vanessa coordinated the vigil, made a slideshow, even gave a speech about resilience and healing that made the local paper. A year later it was Maria Lopez. She slipped on a trail during a field trip. Vanessa again was the only staff member present when it happened. The paramedics called it a horrible accident. The school brought in counselors, me included. Vanessa stayed composed, comforting parents, managing grief groups. And after that, she was nominated for a district-wide leadership award. Then last fall, David Ng. An allergic reaction during snack time. He was new to the class. Severe peanut allergy. The EpiPen didn't work, apparently. Vanessa said she administered it right away, but it was too late. I remember watching her during the memorial service. Perfect posture, calm voice, consoling his sobbing mother like she'd known her for years. And then I noticed the necklace she wore. A delicate gold charm that I knew she couldn't afford on our salary. That's when the knot in my stomach started. I tried to shake it. I really did. Vanessa is my sister-in-law. She married Adam's younger brother, and we've been colleagues for 7 years. Everyone loves her. She's smart, devoted, great with the kids. She even helped me pick out Isla's preschool. But I couldn't stop thinking about the pattern. 3 kids, 3 tragedies, all in her care, all followed by promotions, press, and sudden little luxuries, an upgraded car, expensive handbags, weekend getaways. So I brought it up to Adam, just tentatively. Don't get mad, I said one night as we were folding laundry. But have you ever thought it's strange, all those incidents in Vanessa's class? He stopped folding. What are you talking about? I don't know, I said carefully. It's just every time something happens she seems to come out stronger, like she knows exactly how to handle it, and she's always the only adult around. Adam gave me a long flat stare. You're obsessing again, he said. This is your grief stuff. You need to let it go. I waited, hoping he'd ask questions, but instead he tossed a towel into the basket and said, you should talk to someone, a therapist. Seriously. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to Adam snore, staring at the ceiling, and all I could think about were 3 names. Jeremy, Maria, David, and the way Vanessa never seemed to cry. I tried not to become obsessed. I really did. But the more I tried to push the thoughts away, the more they came back louder. I started going through old school newsletters, news articles, social media posts. It was all there if you looked closely. Each accident had odd little inconsistencies, things most people overlooked, things I couldn't anymore. Jeremy's inhaler had been in his backpack, but no one ever found it during the emergency. Maria's hiking boots had no traction. Strange for a field trip where we were explicitly told to wear proper gear. David's allergy file said his EpiPen had been updated 2 months before, but the school nurse record showed a gap in documentation. It didn't feel like coincidences. It felt like breadcrumbs. I brought it up at work. Not directly, not accusations, just questions. Hey, I asked Principal DeWitt during a casual chat in the break room. Do you remember the Lopez field trip? Was anyone else on supervision with Vanessa? He blinked at me like I'd asked something odd. No, I think she volunteered to take that group solo. Why? I shook my head, just trying to remember the details for a trauma training refresher. He nodded and went back to his coffee. That was how it always went. People didn't want to connect the dots. Even my closest coworkers dismissed it. Vanessa? Come on, said Erin from 3rd grade. She's got the cleanest record in the district. You're reaching. She's been through hell with those kids, added another. You think she wanted those things to happen? No. I didn't think she wanted it. I just couldn't shake the feeling that she'd allowed it, or worse, calculated it. Then one Friday night everything shifted. We were at a teacher social at a local bar, mostly unwinding after a long week. I was sipping seltzer when Michelle, my friend from the science department, slid into the booth beside me. You still thinking about those kids from Vanessa's class? She asked casually. I blinked. Why? Michelle shrugged. Just weird how she's always the one right in the middle of the tragedy. Makes you wonder. I stared at her. You believe me? She sipped her beer and nodded. I didn't until I remembered something. She used to teach at my old school. Before you came. She left after a kid had a severe allergic reaction during class. I sat upright. Wait, she never mentioned that. Yeah, well, Michelle said, leaning in. It was a big mess. The kid almost died. Rumor was there was some kind of negligence, but the district covered it. Quiet transfer. My hands were shaking by the time I got home. I stayed up till 2 a.m., combing through old staff directories, school board reports, and parent blogs. I found it. Vanessa had been listed on a class roster at Hillside Elementary in 2018. The same year a student named Trevor Bates was hospitalized for anaphylaxis. There were whispers online about a settlement. No charges. Quiet exit. I brought the printouts to the superintendent's office the following Monday, sat across from her with every shred of nerve I had and laid it all out. She didn't even look past the first page. I'm going to say this plainly, she said, her voice like ice. If you continue harassing Mrs. Delgado, we'll have no choice but to begin a formal review of your conduct. I opened my mouth, stunned. You're a counselor, Mrs. Evans, not an investigator. When I walked out of her office, I knew I was on my own. And for the first time, I realized just how dangerous that was. It started with a gift basket, lavender-scented lotion, a spa certificate, and 2 tickets to a wellness retreat just outside Portland. The note attached said, "You and Adam deserve a break. Let me take Isla for the weekend. Love, V." My hands went cold as I read it. Vanessa had never offered to babysit overnight. She'd watched Isla here and there an hour or 2 after school, but never like this. Not for an entire weekend. Not without me asking. Adam thought it was sweet. "It's just what we need," he said, holding up the retreat brochure. "And honestly, Vanessa's great with Isla." I smiled with my mouth and lied with my eyes. "Yeah, great." I didn't say a word about the flash drive tucked into my purse, or the microsurveillance camera I'd ordered off Amazon, or the GPS sticker I had already slipped into Isla's lunchbox. Vanessa didn't even flinch when I brought it up. "Of course you can set up some nanny cams," she said, smiling. Every mom worries the first time she leaves their little one overnight. She handed me a color-coded itinerary. Art museum on Saturday, a puppet show Sunday, organic meals packed and labeled in pink containers. It was all too perfect. I thanked her and pretended to be touched. Then I went home and cried in the bathroom where Isla couldn't hear me. The morning we were supposed to leave, I was jittery with nerves. Adam was already in full retreat mode, shuffling around the kitchen in yoga pants he hadn't worn since our honeymoon. I forced myself to play along. But then I realized I'd left my charger in the upstairs office. I told Adam I'd run back real quick before we hit the road. When I walked into the house, I wasn't trying to snoop. I really wasn't. I just heard her voice. It was coming from the kitchen, soft but sharp. I stopped in the hallway and held my breath. "Yeah, no, it's happening this weekend," Vanessa said. I could hear her pacing. "I already added myself to the trust paperwork. She'll never notice the change. After this, I'll be the only one listed. The trust goes to my kids." Silence, then laughter. "No, she still thinks it's a wellness retreat. And the allergy? Oh, she's gonna believe it. The paramedics always do." I couldn't feel my feet. I couldn't even feel the floor. I pulled my phone from my back pocket and started recording. My fingers shook as I pressed the button. Vanessa kept talking, calm and measured. "I've already got the Benadryl in her bag. It'll just look like an accident. Same as the others. Same as the others." That was the moment I stopped being scared and started acting. I shoved the phone into my coat, opened the front door loud enough to cover my footsteps, and stepped into the living room like I had just arrived. "Vanessa," I called. "Change of plans." She looked up, startled. "Oh, everything okay?" I smiled. "Isla's coming with us." And just like that, I scooped my daughter into my arms, held her tighter than I ever had before, and walked out the door. My heart was pounding. My legs were shaking, but I had what I needed. And I wasn't letting Vanessa near my daughter ever again. The first person I called was Adam. I parked 2 blocks from my parents' house and sat in the car with Isla asleep in her booster seat, my phone gripped tight. My hands were still trembling, but the voice memo was saved. That was all that mattered. Adam answered on the second ring. "Hey, did you get the charger?" "I'm not going," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Isla's staying with me." A long pause. "Wait, what? Vanessa already Adam." I swallowed. "She's not who you think she is." I overheard her on the phone. I recorded it. "She's been planning things." "What things?" I hesitated. "Hurting kids. For money. For control. For the trust." Silence. Then softly, almost like he was speaking to a frightened animal, "Natalie, I think you need to take a break. This is what I meant when I said you're spiraling." I shut my eyes. "I'm not. I have proof. I'm calling Vanessa," he said. "This is going too far." "No." But he had already hung up. I didn't know what to do, so I drove straight to my parents' house. They lived just outside town, and I hadn't told them anything yet. I figured we'd be safe there for a while, long enough to get our bearings. But when I pulled into their driveway, something was off. There were 2 police cruisers parked out front. I barely had time to unbuckle Isla before a uniformed officer was walking toward me, one hand resting near his belt. "Natalie Evans?" "Yes, I'm Officer Brent. We received a call from your husband and your sister-in-law. They're concerned for your well-being and for the safety of your daughter." "What?" I held Isla's hand tighter. "No, this is a mistake. I'm the one reporting something." "Vanessa." "Ma'am," he said gently, "we need you to come with us." "Where?" My voice cracked. "I haven't done anything." He gestured toward the other cruiser. "For a psychiatric evaluation." My mom came rushing down the front steps. Sweetheart, she said, reaching out, just go with them. It's okay. They're going to help you. You believe her? I asked, my voice rising. You believe Vanessa? She looked away. They took Isla inside. I screamed for her, tried to pull away, but it was no use. I was in the back of the cruiser before I could even process what was happening. At the facility, everything happened quickly. A flurry of signatures. A sedative. I remember lights on the ceiling, the click of the nurse's shoes, the way everyone spoke to me like I was a child who had wandered off. When I asked for my phone, they said it had been submitted with my belongings. When I asked about the recording, they said there was no file. And when I asked for Adam, they said he'd already spoken to staff and confirmed I had a long-standing pattern of paranoia. They showed me printed emails, texts I never sent. They called it a delusional episode. Even Adam believed it. She's been under a lot of stress, he said to the doctor in front of me. I didn't want to say anything, but it's been going on for a while. I couldn't breathe. My world tilted sideways. I wasn't just being ignored anymore. I was being erased. The thing about being locked up in a psych facility against your will is nobody believes you when you say you're sane. I spent the first day in silence, watching, listening. They gave me a shared room with a flickering ceiling light and a mattress that smelled like old plastic. The staff spoke to me like I was fragile glass, ready to shatter. Would you like a puzzle, Natalie? Why don't you sit with the others today? I said nothing. I smiled. I nodded. Just like Mrs. Decker told me to. She found me on the second day. She was in her 70s, maybe older, with thin gray hair tied into a braid and eyes that looked like they'd seen everything and survived it. She was folding laundry in the rec room when she saw me walk in and patted the seat beside her. You're new, she said. I nodded. Don't act sane, she said, without looking at me. That's how they keep you here. I turned slowly. What? They test you. If you try too hard to seem normal, they think you're covering something. So you play the game. You don't protest. You agree. You smile. She looked at me then. You stay alive long enough to find a door. I stared at her. How long have you been here? She gave a thin smile. Long enough to stop waiting for someone to believe me. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I started paying attention. I watched the way the staff avoided certain patients. How they whispered in corners. How one nurse wrote things on her clipboard before anything had even happened. Vanessa's voice still echoed in my head. The trust goes to my kids. And now she had full control. Isla was staying at her house again. Adam had signed temporary guardianship while I was getting help. Every time I asked for a phone call, they gave me some excuse. The phone line's down. Let's wait until your next evaluation. Your husband already gave us your emergency contacts. Every time I asked for my belongings, they smiled and handed me slippers. I started to think maybe this was the end of the story. Then Rosa slipped me the note. It was during medication rounds. She was a quiet nurse with warm eyes and a nervous habit of chewing her lip. She handed me my pills in a paper cup like she always did. But this time her fingers brushed mine for a second too long. Inside my palm, a torn piece of paper. I waited until I was back in my room before I read it. You're not crazy. I've seen this before. Hold on. That was all it said. But it was enough. Enough to remind me I wasn't alone. Enough to remind me I still had time. The facility had drills twice a month. Fire, earthquake, medical emergency, you name it. Patients were shuffled out in orderly lines while nurses ran through the motions. Rosa told me ahead of time. Just 4 words whispered near the water cooler. Wednesday, 11:30. Be ready. I didn't ask for details. I didn't risk a reply. I just nodded. That morning I took my meds like usual. Tucked under my tongue, spit into a tissue when no one was looking. I braided my hair like Mrs. Decker taught me. I smiled at the staff, folded my blanket, and sat quietly at morning group like a perfect little patient. At exactly 11:29, the fire alarm blared, shouting, flashing lights. Nurses herding us toward the courtyard. Rosa caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. Then, just as we reached the exit doors, she turned to the aide beside her and yelled, "He's having a seizure. Chaos." While everyone rushed to the left, Rosa took my elbow and pulled me right, through a staff hallway, down the back stairs, into the laundry room. There, tucked behind a rack of hospital gowns, sat a maintenance cart, and under the linens, scrubs, a hoodie, tennis shoes, and a stolen badge. "Go," she said, shoving the bag into my hands. "Take the staff elevator to the garage. Don't stop. Don't talk to anyone." "Why are you doing this?" I asked, heart pounding. Her jaw clenched. "Because you're not the first mom who got in Vanessa's way." Then she opened the door and disappeared. I changed in the back of a supply van. By the time I walked out of that facility's parking garage, nobody looked twice. I was just another staffer going off shift. I kept my head down, walked 5 blocks, and ducked into a gas station bathroom. There, I finally used the emergency prepaid phone Rosa had left in the bag. The only number I remembered. Michelle. She picked up on the second ring. "Natalie." My voice cracked. "It's me. I need help." 30 minutes later, she picked me up outside a diner on Route 9. I slid into the passenger seat of her ancient Subaru and nearly broke down when I saw her face. "Oh my God," she said, staring at me. "You really did it. You got out." "Not for me," I said. "For Isla." We drove straight to Michelle's apartment, a cluttered upstairs space packed with boxes and equipment. I had forgotten Michelle had left the district last year to start a podcast focused on educational scandals and systemic abuse. At the time, I thought she was being paranoid. Now, I was just grateful. "I've been digging," she said, clearing space for me at her kitchen table. "After you told me about Hillside Elementary, I looked deeper. I found a string of similar incidents, 5 students across 3 different schools, all with vague explanations, all during Vanessa's employment. I pulled out the flash drive I had hidden in my sock. I got part of the audio. Before they wiped it, Michelle plugged it into her laptop and hit play. Vanessa's voice filled the room, cold, calculating. Michelle turned to me, eyes wide. "This is enough to start, but we need more." "I know where to look," I said. "Where?" "Insurance records. She's been cashing out." Michelle blinked. "Jesus." We worked through the night, cross-referencing student names, finding digital copies of life insurance policies taken out weeks before each incident, all signed with shaky, slightly altered versions of parental signatures, all traced to accounts linked to aliases. Michelle called in a contact, a retired private investigator who owed her a favor. By dawn, we had more than suspicion. We had a pattern, a trail, a case, and one terrifying truth. Vanessa wasn't just dangerous, she was about to strike again. Vanessa was always precise, strategic. She didn't act without planning everything down to the last minute and the last mile. So when Michelle tracked a credit card alert to a cabin rental in Sisters, Oregon, under one of Vanessa's known aliases, we both knew exactly what it meant. "She took Isla," I whispered, staring at the laptop screen. Michelle's voice dropped. "That cabin's out of cell range. Closest tower's 10 miles out. If she's planning something, it's happening tonight." We didn't wait. We printed out everything we had: insurance forms, fake signatures, identity confirmations, audio transcripts, bank records. Michelle called a state trooper she knew from her days doing teacher safety training. His name was Officer Dale Corman, and to our surprise, he listened. "She's filed emergency claims under different names?" he asked, flipping through the documents. "And this voice recording, that's her planning a false allergic reaction?" "She's going to kill my daughter," I said, "and make it look like an accident." Corman nodded grimly. "Get to the cabin. I'll meet you at the base road with backup once we're in range. Leave your phone location on. We'll trace you when you ping the nearest tower." We left within the hour. Me, Michelle, and the PI in a borrowed SUV, flying up Route 20 like the asphalt was on fire. The closer we got, the colder I felt. "She's not going to wait," I said. "Vanessa's careful. If she's isolated with Isla now, she's already setting it up." Michelle gripped the wheel tighter. "We'll stop her." We hit snow around mile marker 73, patchy and slick from melting, the kind that makes tires slide when you least expect it. My stomach twisted with every bend in the road. I kept checking the dash clock like it could tell me something useful. By the time we saw the split in the trees and the old brown sign for Maple Hollow cabins, the sun was starting to dip. A half mile in, we lost cell reception. Corman was still miles away. Michelle killed the headlights and we coasted the rest of the way on instinct and hope. Vanessa's car was parked outside cabin 6B, its bumper still dusty from the gravel drive. Lights were on inside, the curtains drawn. I jumped out before the car even stopped moving. Michelle hissed, "Natalie, wait." But I was already running. I didn't knock. I kicked the door in. Vanessa was standing at the kitchen counter, holding a small white bottle and a cup. Isla was slumped on the couch, groggy and pale, her little head tilted at a strange angle. "What the hell?" Vanessa started, then froze. I charged. She dropped the cup and tried to back away, but Michelle and the PI were behind me now. I shoved past her and grabbed Isla, feeling for her pulse, her breath, thank God. Still there, shallow but there. Vanessa lunged for the table, where her bag sat open, but Michelle got to it first. "Don't even try," she snapped. Then from outside, sirens. Officer Corman and 2 state troopers barreled in moments later. We gave them everything. The audio recording, the forged insurance forms, the proof that Vanessa had filed claims in Isla's name just a week earlier, the cup she dosed. They read her rights right there in the middle of the pine-floored cabin. She didn't say a word, not one, but as they let her out in cuffs, she turned and looked me dead in the eye, and smiled, like the story wasn't over yet, but it was, for her. Vanessa was arraigned within 48 hours. They charged her with attempted murder, insurance fraud, identity theft, and 5 counts of homicide tied to previous, accidental deaths. Once the story broke, once the media got hold of the audio and the evidence trail, the public turned fast. Gone was the poised special ed teacher with the polished speeches and inspirational quotes. In her place stood a predator, calculating, cold. She didn't fight it. Her lawyers negotiated a plea deal to avoid trial, but the damage was already done. Parents came forward, former co-workers. Even Mrs. Decker's daughter submitted testimony about her mother's long-term commitment and how Vanessa had once volunteered to handle her file when she first arrived at the facility. The district scrambled to distance themselves, but it didn't work. Families filed lawsuits. The superintendent resigned. As for Adam, he fell apart. I moved back into my own house with Isla the week Vanessa was booked. Adam came by once, just once, standing on the porch with red eyes and hands trembling. He apologized, said he hadn't believed me because it was easier not to, that it was simpler to think his sister was damaged but kind, not deliberate and lethal. I didn't say much. There wasn't much left to say. He started therapy. He checks in on Isla now and then, but I haven't decided yet what to do with that version of love, the kind that only shows up when the truth becomes undeniable. I went back to the school once after it all came out. Principal DeWitt offered me a new position, District Director of Student Welfare, Oversight Reform Policy, a generous title and a higher salary. I told him no, not because I wasn't grateful, but because I couldn't go back to the same place that once told me to stop harassing Vanessa. Instead, I used the settlement money and a flood of community donations to start the Jeremy Maria David Foundation, named after the first 3 children we lost before we knew. We offer grief counseling, advocacy for families navigating school tragedies, and legal aid for whistleblowers like me who were told to stay in their lane. We also offer scholarships, one for each child Vanessa was connected to. One for Isla too, though she doesn't know it yet. She's only 6. She shouldn't have to know most of this, just enough to understand that her mother fought for her, that she was never alone, that she made it out, that we both did. Last weekend, we planted a tree in the backyard, just me and her, a silver maple. Isla picked it because the leaves look like stars. We dug the hole together, filled it with soft soil, and placed a small plaque at the base, for every child who didn't get to grow up, and every mother who refused to stop digging. Isla held my hand the whole time, and for the first time in a long, long time I finally felt rooted, right where I belonged.